we are trying to make contact with you. We'll see how we go through the session. But Peter, can we just perhaps start with you? I'm not sure if you've heard the other sessions that we've done this morning with other witnesses, but in the time available, I think the committee would like to hear your story, your experience of which has led you here today, about trying to return to Australia, and then we would go around it with senators to ask you questions. I should also flag there has been media coming in and out of the committee room this morning, so I just want to check that you are comfortable if the media film any part of this hearing with you today.
No problem.
Okay. Yeah. I'll hand over to you then, if you can just explain your circumstance.
Yes, thank you. So I prepared a statement before, but I think I'm going to leave that. I'm just going to tell you what my situation is. So I'm currently in Amsterdam, and I was in Germany before. I left Australia in September 2019 for a job and to be a bit closer to my family. That was after being in Australia for 10 years. I'm a dual citizen now. In March, I decided, after my partner had been with me for almost 2 months, we decided that it wasn't really the best choice, and we decided that the best for me was to return to Australia and to continue our lives there, basically. Only a few weeks after, 1 or 2 weeks after I resigned, it was not really a resignation, it was within my probation period, I got sick, and I obviously gave notice for my lease and my work. My things were still packed. They arrived from Australia on the day that I decided to really leave. So they were standing there, and I got really sick. Germany went into pretty strict lockdown. All the shops were closed. You couldn't rent a van or anything. Basically, long story short, I couldn't leave because I was sick. You don't want to infect anyone. No tests available. So the smartest thing to do, and also according to the Australian government's websites, was to stay put. Right. So I've heard that in other statements as well. There was no indication that you had to treat this like an emergency, in that sense that you had to do everything in your power to immediately return home. And that messaging continued for quite a long time. I think I looked on the website almost daily, especially when I was sick, because that was a scary time. And basically the directions were stay put because you have a higher risk of catching COVID. The major hubs might not let you through, so you might get stranded somewhere in the middle. As long as you got a roof over your head, you got food, basically. If you don't, ask your family and friends. That was another one. Don't expect us to do much. And for me, that was fine, right? I was in a really good country. I think Germany has the most ICU beds in the world, and I wasn't afraid. I had healthcare. I'm a dual citizen. I've got a European passport, so there was no reason for me to stress. And what I decided really was to, month by month, extend my lease. My landlord agreed on that. And by the time I was recovered and the borders opened again, so my friend could pick me up, I moved to the Netherlands. Tickets weren't available during that time, or at least not within my budget. I can't really recall what it was, but it should be around the same price as it is now, like $12,000 for a one way. So all the reasons were there to just wait for a bit. First week of June, I booked a ticket with British Airways. They became available. By the time I already knew that you should book business class to have a chance to get on a plane. I did that. That ticket was cancelled the day, 9th of July, the day before the caps were announced. The cap was announced, and the self-funded quarantine completely cancelled. So around $4,500, $5,000 was hanging there with British Airways. And I immediately booked a new ticket with Qatar. And that story continued. I mean, you've heard the story. So right now I'm still here. And that's it. Yeah.
Peter, do you have a flight out? Do you have a path to Australia?
Yeah, currently, so a lot happened, right? So I don't really want to go, or I'm happy to go into details if I'm asked, but right now it's the 3rd of January. Yeah, and I've got a business class ticket, an upgraded ticket for the 3rd of January, which is,
Wow.
yeah, by that time, right now, I'm away from my partner for 8 months, not really by choice. And by that time, it's almost a year. And that's yeah, that's not good. That's not great. That's not good.
Yeah, no, it's a long time away, I can imagine. Senator Keneally.
Thank you, Peter, for appearing today. My understanding is you actually started the website, removethecaps.com.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And how did that come about? Were you starting to hear stories either in the Netherlands or in Europe, or how did that initiative commence?
Yeah, it was fairly simple. I kind of stayed clear from all the Facebook groups. My partner was following it closely, and she said if you go on that, you will suffer from it because of all the stories of people getting bumped off flights, and so I very deliberately didn't do that. But after my latest ordeal, after the latest change to my ticket, I actually decided to do that, and that was on a weekend, I think, that I started reading all those stories, and I was really shocked. And there was someone in one of those groups who said, we need a website and we need to do a fundraiser for a website. And I was like, yeah, okay, I do this for a living. So I started doing that. And while I was making that, I did that in a night, basically. I came up with the idea of the map. I did that thing I did before with another campaign. I was like, this is really good idea for this specific purpose. And yeah, it's fairly straightforward. So
for people who may not have seen that map, can you describe it?
Yeah, so what I did is there's an option for people to submit their location and their story. I don't capture any personal details, to be clear, because I've been asked that a lot of times. So the only guarantee that these stories are real is my assessment. I manually approve every single one of them and make a decision based on that because of GDPR here in Europe. There's no way that I wanted to capture anyone's private details, to be clear. So people submit their location, they submit their stories, or not, just the location and initials, name. And then that's visualized on a map, so it's clustered as well in the different places. And yeah, I was surprised. So I've got 2,600 submissions now in total. But that, like, I think after 2 weeks, it was 2,000 already or something. So that was, I think, considering the official numbers, that was a pretty good. Yeah, success sounds a bit awful, but yeah.
And that's basically word of mouth, I presume. It's not like you've gone out advertising this website.
It depends on your definition of advertising. So
Sure.
like I already said, I'm not new to this, so I knew a little bit how to promote it. Let's put it that way. So within the groups,
within the groups. That's what I meant.
We didn't pay for advertising. I tried a little bit on Instagram. But that's the good thing about it. It's that it's really organic in that sense, right? So it's social, the traffic, but it's you can tell that this is a very engaged audience, and that it's real. There's a couple of indicators that I have that it's, as you say, word to mouth, and that it's real. This is not a fake situation or people just nagging, or because that's the stuff that you hear, right? Like whinging. Everybody's whinging. Yeah.
And so is this the map that appeared on CNN? Am I correct in understanding that?
Yeah. Which, it made in that sense it made world news. That was interesting.
And if I could just, before I cede some time to the other senators, we here in Australia, there's been a debate about the caps, and the state governments are responsible for the caps, or the federal government could do something, and obviously the Commonwealth are in charge of our international borders and our quarantine arrangements. When you hear those types of this is a state government problem or this is a federal government problem. What's your response as a person who is currently stranded overseas?
Yeah, yeah. I think the obvious. For me. That's not relevant. That's not our problem. I think there's an overall responsibility of the federal governments to take care of this situation and come up with a solution. And if there is any doubt about where that responsibility lies, I don't know. That's maybe my naive view on this. Then they should say, okay, that's all great, but then we're going to take responsibility and we are going to look into alternative ways of dealing with this. Because that's really my biggest issue with this, is that there seems to be an emphasis on people that are stranded, that they need help. But I think that's actually that's the world upside down. Because if these quite strict measures weren't in place, then there could be more people on a plane. There was more quarantine capacity or alternative ways of dealing with this, ankle bracelets, right? Like whatever you want to do. But then nobody needed help. Everybody bought multiple tickets. People have invested their savings already in this. It's not, and of course, there are cases where that is needed, but I hope at least that they are prioritized anyway. But for the majority of people, it would be great if you were guaranteed your own purchased spot in the plane, right? And that's the thing. You're waiting for a month. You're not finding a job. That's my case. I could find a job. I could decide to stay here. I'm in a very privileged position that I have 2 passports. Got my family here, got my partner overseas. That's big. That's my biggest challenge, right? Personally. So, and that you can wave that away. It's like, that's not that important, but a year is very long, I can tell you. So, but I can take care of myself. That's really not the problem. But when every time, and I've heard this in the previous statement, you have a month, you're waiting there with your suitcase at your parents' place, two days in advance before you're supposed to fly, you get an email, sorry, it's cancelled. You cannot anticipate on anything. Like in the Netherlands, you have to register where you live. You have to, like, it's not, by comparison, it's not like Australia where you have a two-week notice on a lease. It's 3 months here. In Germany, you have to put your own kitchen in a rental, right? It's not, you can't make decisions based on this.
Right. And just before my last question then, although the website is called Remove the Caps, just for clarity, you're not, it sounds to me like your position is we need to have some way to safely manage people's travel during a global pandemic. It's not free for all. You're just saying there are sensible ways, there are other ways we can do it besides a cap, a hard cap on the number of people who come into the country at any one time.
Yeah, well, the cap is the issue.
Yes.
The actual cap that you so the numbers are the issue. But I'm not. That doesn't imply, as you say, that it's 2 different things. You as you say, you manage that risk. I'm not a person who says that this virus isn't real. Not by any means. I was probably affected by it, and it wasn't great. So, that's not the point. It's just exactly as you say. It's about looking into alternative ways and making sure that more people can actually come back. And there are a lot of moving parts in this, right? So there's also still people getting an exemption to leave. I don't want to drag this part into the discussion too much, but that is part of the problem. Because on the other hand, you don't want to restrict your citizens to leave the country at all, completely. But that is a number. There's a number of people that every month also leaves. There is interstate travel. There's domestic travel still. It's very unclear what part of the quarantine capacity goes to that. So if you and that's what we've been doing. That was part of my written statement. We've been gathering all this data and modeled a little bit here and there. Yeah, it doesn't. It sounds a bit. It doesn't add up. It's a problem. They really should start looking into this, because the problem is much bigger than the 28,000, and of that 28,000, 17,000 that want to come back. That's just not true. There's in the hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. I'm just going to have to jump in there because we do have Gina who's joined us from the Philippines, and we've had some issues trying to get her, and we now have her. And I'm conscious of the time for this session. So, Gina, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh,
Hello.
great. It's Katie Gallagher here. So thank you. We have got you. I'm just wondering if you could tell us a bit about your story and what's led you to being a witness here this afternoon, and then we would go around to senators for questions. Is that okay with you, Gina?
Yeah, sure. Sounds
Yep.
good. Yeah, no worries. So pretty much I was in the Philippines, and for a few months prior to everything happening, I had already started on opening an animal rescue shelter. So I had already taken in a lot of animals and had a lot under my care. And so by the time that borders started closing and things started happening, I already had, so many animals that I had to take care of, like 40 or so. And I couldn't just hop on a plane and leave them because it was entirely up to me. Anyway, so I tried to set things up so that way I could leave. I tried to get in some donations so I could hire staff to take care of the shelter and the animals. While I was in the midst of doing that, I actually broke my leg, and then I've been scrambling to try to get a flight back to Australia, especially since I had surgery on my leg here, and the surgery site has gotten badly infected. It's been infected for more than 2 months, just weeping pus all the time. And I haven't been able to secure a flight back to Australia to get medical care. And here I really don't have much help.
Wow. Do you have a... Gina, do you have a return flight?
At the moment, I've been speaking to the Australian Embassy in Manila regularly, and they put me on a high priority list for any upcoming flights. And finally, Philippine Airlines called me a couple of days ago to offer me a seat on a flight tomorrow. So I'm hoping that all goes through. But yeah, it's been 2 months of waiting and trying and just nothing available. Okay. At the start of the 2 months, I booked a flight, but it's not till the end of October.
Yep.
That's how much is available.
Okay. And you've still got some quite significant health needs there by the sounds of it.
Yeah, my leg is swollen up again with pus, but the doctor can't do anything anymore because all the hospitals are filling up with coronavirus patients. And so they just can't treat anyone else. They can't do any more surgeries.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no more help here.
A very, very difficult situation for you. I'm sure the whole committee hopes that you get on that plane tomorrow and get home so you can get some health care here. Can I go to Senator Davey and then I'll go to Senator Rice?
Thank you, Jen, and thank you both for appearing today. And Fiona, I really am sorry to hear of your situation, and I hope you get the appropriate medical care.
Gina.
I've been sick overseas. Sorry, Gina.
Yeah,
Wrong
Fiona
with
was
it.
the previous.
But, that's right. I've been sick overseas, and it's not a fun time. So I hope you get on that flight tomorrow. I want to ask you both, because we have been hearing from witness after witness today that they can book flights, but then at the last minute those flights get cancelled. Are the airlines giving you any indication as to why? One witness told us that the airline was actually booking flights as though there were no caps or constraints, but then taking people off when, surprise, the Australian government hasn't lifted the cap. But I'm sort of trying to work out where the onus lies with these airlines taking bookings and tying people's money up in the process, even though they'll refund it when the booking gets cancelled. But that money has been tied up for that period of time. And as you said, people are waiting for a month with their bags packed, all excited, only to have their hearts broken. What excuses are you getting from the airlines?
I'm happy to say something about that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You go.
I'm not
you
sure,
go
Peter,
first,
you go
Fiona.
first, and
No,
then
it's
I'll
all
go
right,
to
you go.
Jean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll try and steer the
Yeah.
ship.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think they're different. They're different things. So in the very beginning, I've been wondering this myself, of course. So trying to figure this out. I do think the airlines actually get to know about the number that they're allowed to let on the plane only a few days in advance. If you look at the patterns there, that seems to be around 2 days, 2-3 days that they actually get receive a notification, I guess, on which they can base the who's getting on there, who has priority, and also then further assess how to make the flight viable based on ticket prices, who pays the most, that story. I'm not sure how long that's been going on for, because my experience with British Airways was a bit different. I think they were just, at some point they decided and were allowed to start selling tickets. I bought my ticket, and yeah, that's not a coincidence, right? Like the 9th, that ticket is cancelled. So that was a notification they received from the Australian government.
Yeah.
I think for a few days there were still tickets available. I was quite annoyed with that, but British Airways has been quite good, or really good. I've received my money back within a few weeks. It's still not great, but hey, as you say, you get it back. And then I think the systems took a bit of time. So after a few days, there were no flights available anymore, and they've updated that. With Qatar, I've seen a different pattern. And I've been in contact with them a lot, and it's very stressful, as you say, with that cancellation. It messes with your head. So you're like, that anytime you can get that cancellation, and I even decided something like I'm just going to stay. I'm just going to cancel myself just to take the control back. And when you call them, what they say, they have their standard answers. So they say that there's nothing that they can do. But at some point, they did come forward and say, okay, we at least base this on the ticket prices, who paid the most. So that was one sort of win in the sense of clarity. So that you knew what was going on. What I've seen on the website is that they very closely follow the government standpoint, I would say. So whatever measures are in place, whatever changes, you see reflected on their website. I don't think they're obviously overselling. I'm not sure if they do that now, but they have been doing that. Otherwise, nobody would have been bumped. Whether they have that information, sorry, I'm talking too much, but it's very complex analysis, I think. So. Okay, very simple. I don't think that they know how much they can sell. So I don't blame them in that sense. So I'm not blaming them for picking the most expensive tickets first, because they have to make that viable. And on the other hand, also, I highly doubt that they are. Sorry. I don't think that I might have been some airlines in the beginning, but the risk for them that someone figures that out, that they're really, really doing something dodgy. I don't think they do that. I don't think they have the information, to be honest.
I just.
Sorry, you go. Sorry, Senator David. Can I just let Gina answer, because she wanted to jump in there too?
Sure, thank you. I do agree with some of those points, actually. I've mainly been speaking with Philippine Airlines. I've called them on the phone every time to try to ask questions about what's going on. And essentially what they told me is that they plan flights and then they book some passengers, but then they don't finish taking bookings until they get clearance, which they said is 3-4 days before the flight, and then they call the remaining passengers, especially off a high priority list that the embassy submits, and then that's how they fill remaining seats. But they don't know exactly how many passengers they can have until the Australian government approves the flight to land, is what they told me.
Senator Davey?
Yeah, okay, so I understand that, and I think that's something we can investigate with the departments further this afternoon. Just with, you said that the High Commission helped you get this flight tomorrow. Hopefully you're on that flight tomorrow. Were you made aware, because I know that our government has facilitated flights from the Philippines almost monthly since April. Have you been made aware of any of them, or were those flights before you were able to come home? Because I'm aware of your charity work, so I know the restrictions on you jumping on the, early bandwagon.
Yeah.
But in your conversations with the High Commission, were you made aware of any previous flights since you were able to travel?
Yes. So the only flights that I have been made aware of was one in May before I was able to leave. And that was the first flight that was, offered to me as like a repatriation flight. And then I wasn't able to take it. And it wasn't too long after that I broke my leg. It was only like a month later. And then the embassy called me saying there might be a flight available in, they said 5 days' time from that call. And so I waited and I tried to get things in order. And then because I had to, get clearance to leave the island, I had to get medical checks. I had to renew my visa 3 days before a flight, and all of which is very difficult, obviously, with a broken leg. So by the time the airline called me and offered the flight, it was only 2 days before, and it wasn't possible to get my clearances, and so I wasn't allowed to take it. And so those are the only flights that have been available since May. And then obviously I looked online as well, but nothing was available until October or later.
Yeah, and we've heard that from previous witnesses that bookings have to be months in ahead. So thank you both very much, and I wish you all the best. I hope you get home soon.
Thanks, Senator Davis.
Thank you.
Can I go
Thank
to
you
you,
so much.
Senator Rice?
Yes, thanks, Chair. And look, thank you very much, Gina and Peter, for your stories and evidence today. It's really powerful. Look, Peter, I want to start with you. I've just been looking at your website, which is just so, overwhelming in terms of these stories of people all around the world. Can I ask, in terms of, have you followed up with any of those people, or is your website just a clearinghouse for these stories? And what do you know of the personal circumstances of other people?
No, I actually, like I said, I'm not able to contact them directly through the information that they send, that they submit. But because I'm in all those groups, it really has turned into a 24/7 more than full-time unpaid job over the last 4 weeks, because I receive a lot of emails and also via the groups, the chats. I also started a Facebook group. It's over 1,000 people now. Part of that of people that offer support, so free housing and other support in the several countries where people are stranded. So that works quite well. And I communicate via the Facebook page, and people, I get a lot of messages every day and emails. Yeah.
So, what I want to go to is the level of support or lack of support that people are getting from consulates and embassies overseas. In terms of what actually is going on, the average, experience that somebody overseas is going through.
I hate to say, but I think it's completely lacking. It's absolutely 100% non-existent. And I think, as I mentioned before, I want to make very clear, because it's very easy to say, I want to, that's what I've done deliberately from the beginning. I'm part of this, of course, because I miss my girlfriend really badly. But a lot of these things don't really apply to me. I can make certain choices that will make very sure that I won't be homeless, I will have food, and I will be fine, right? So, but that's not for everyone. And when I saw that the solution that was proposed was a loan of a couple of $1,000 to basically pay for these overpriced tickets that are only the result of a policy, I was appalled, especially because it's a repayable loan within 6 months that you offer to literally the most vulnerable people. And the stories that I read, it's really horrible. Like, again, I'm not, I'm fine. Let me keep me out of the picture. But there's so many people that are struggling so hard, and with kids and parents. So the emotional part right there. So parents separated from their children. It sounds very dramatic, but it is really dramatic. There's children who don't recognize their father anymore, right? So those are the stories that I get. I'm happy to say I'm now getting supervision. I'm starting supervision. My partner works in mental health care, basically, because I'm fine. But the stories that are it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible, and they don't get the support. And then I'm sorry, but that's really not helping to put a couple of people at Heathrow with Australian logos, and it's completely unclear what they're actually going to do there at the airport, right? It's like, oh, we've got people there. No, that's just nonsense. So, and one of the things I've heard in a previous statement is that I think for people that were overseas, for you can create the requirements, basically. You can articulate the requirements. But for certain cases, I think it would be more than justifiable that they would qualify for job seeker payments. There's people have paid decades of tax, and just because of these circumstances, there's one little tick box in your application that says, "Are you in Australia?" No, you do not qualify. I think that's shocking. Really, and as far as I'm concerned, you can keep it because I'm fine. Yeah. But that's not for everyone, and I think you shouldn't offer a loan like that to the people that actually need that job seeker payment. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's very powerful to see that. Yes, the stories are traumatizing for you, and I can imagine sort of looking at these stories. So, Gina, what has been your experience with the support or lack of support that you've had from the embassy in the Philippines?
So I've actually been quite fortunate in getting help from the consulate in Manila. They've done what they can to help, but they can't make flights happen. So upon hearing the situation, they put me on the high priority list, and any flights that became available, they submitted it. Hence, I got a phone call about what flight that I couldn't take due to lack of notice. And then the flight tomorrow that actually works with the airline to try to submit my individual case. Before there was any change in the caps, they wanted to request if I could be put on the flight as an extra on top of the cap. So both the consular and the airline were submitting that to the government to request it. So I've received quite a fair bit of support from them, which has been great. But as well, I know of other people, other Australians who are here in the Philippines, and they have absolutely nothing. They don't have any money, so they can't even book a flight. They can't even think about going to Australia without any assistance. So, yeah, I worry about what help they're getting as well.
Do you know, those people that you've been talking to, do you know whether they have been receiving any help from our consulate?
Yes, and from the ones I've spoken to, no, they haven't been receiving help. There's one man in Cebu who bought a fishing boat, and he's just fishing to keep himself living.
Wow. And so as far as you know then, the experience that you've had, the support that you've had is that you were on the consulate's high priority list, and so therefore that has informed the airlines to enable you to be one of the passengers who is actually boarding the flight rather than being bumped off it. Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure. Hopefully they aren't bumping other people off. I don't really know what happens, but all I know is they call me a few days before a flight and offer a seat. But I believe that's when they get approval for the flight landing, and so they have a few seats to offer. So they go through this list of high priority and call. Yeah. Okay, look, just in conclusion, if you just had to say one sentence to the Prime Minister of what the current situation is and how you'd like that to change, what would that be?
Honestly, people just need more assistance to get home, like either raising the caps, but then that doesn't fix everything. There's people with no money or people who have all their money tied up in flights, and how are they going to pay for quarantine? So I'm not sure. Like, people need help to get home, or they at least need some sort of benefits from the government to help them survive, to help them be able to purchase a ticket.
And it's the least that Australian citizens should expect. Mr. Denheaton, what would be your message to the Prime Minister?
Yeah, it's interesting because I just said before that it's the world upside down, right? That it's not about the assistance, but it actually is, of course, when you hear this. So that's me being a little bit limited about my own situation because I don't need it, but that's true. But I want to add to that I do feel that that's a situation that's been created and that they could have anticipated on that. So for most, right, there's always people that are sick or that are in this kind of trouble. That's what the support network is for, what the embassies and the consulates are for anyway. But now their job has gotten bigger, much bigger, because of the situation that the Australian government has created by having so many more people in this kind of trouble. So that's a problem. I think it was short-sighted, and then to come up with suggestions like we have government agents available to set up your fundraiser or a repayable loan within 6 months. You can really do better than that. Come on, and really stop victim blaming and shaming, because that's really what happens. If you another part of why I'm not doing that great personally is because of the messages that I receive. It's horrible. That was one of the other reasons why I started this, is that people that I considered friends in Australia either didn't believe me, that I wasn't able to get home, that I just didn't try hard enough, or were just saying, just stay there. And that's time after time that's been in the media. More than half of the Australians still thinks that the measures are not strict enough and that full border closure is a definite option. And that makes me feel, that's not right. That's not okay. And that doesn't happen by accident. I'm sorry. That is what's happening in the media and what's happening in politics.
So, blaming the victims and you people are the ones that have to cope with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rice. On behalf of the committee, can I thank both witnesses for attending today and for getting through the technology challenges in particular. We all wish you the best. Gina, we hope to hear that you've made it safely back home in the next couple of days, and hang in there, Peter. We hope you're reunited with your girlfriend as soon as possible. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much
for your evidence and for all the effort you're putting into advocating on behalf of many thousands of Australians. Thank you.
No worries.
Colleagues,
thank you for having us.
Thank you. Colleagues, can I... we will suspend now for lunch and we'll see you back at 1:30 this afternoon.